Broadcast live. All right, everybody, welcome. Happy 2021. It's a real honor to be here today with an incredible panel of people to really kick off the eTourism Summit's 22nd year with this new See Tomorrow series, a bi-weekly series that we're going to be presenting as we lead into the 22nd edition of eTourism Summit in September, co-located with US Travel and IPW in Las Vegas. So it's a lot of exciting new things happening with the eTourism Summit, and nothing better than a better way to kick off this year than this amazing panel talking about a really interesting topic that I think is going to help us all at all tourism marketers as we move forward into 2021. So with that, I'd really like to thank and turn over the reins of this See Tomorrow series to an old friend of eTourism Summit through many phases of a long career, but now this Chief Marketing Officer of Entrada Insights, Ted Sullivan. Ted, the stage is yours.
Will, thank you so much. And thank you everyone to eTourism for everything you guys are doing. You're doing a really good job of, during these times, just trying to keep the content out there and keeping it fresh and keeping people involved. Thank you. I'm Ted Sullivan. I'm the CMO of Entrada Insights. And next to me is my partner. Go ahead.
I'm Ezra Calvert, Chief Data Advisor with Entrada Insights. And on behalf of eTourism, welcome.
And we want to let you know, yes, we are together. Our company is having our annual meeting. And just letting you guys know, I think it's really cool what we did. We had all 18 of us show up here in Salt Lake City. We had rapid testing, and we've been, everyone tested negative, and we're under a bubble for 3 days worth of meetings here. So I highly recommend that if you're trying to get your group together anytime soon. So for those of you that might not be familiar with Entrada, we created the very first destination management platform. It's an operating system that takes multiple datas from DMOs, anywhere from 3 data streams all the way up to 30. And we take that data and we work with the DMO to focus on the outcomes of the data, to use that to really help the community in 3 ways. Make sure it improves the visitor experience, helps your local residents and help their happiness level, and then transform the DMO itself with efficient and effective use of the data.
I lead the advisory efforts at Entrada Insights. Our focus has been taking those data streams, turning them into insights and intelligence, but most importantly, place a clarity for the DMO so that we can all focus on what matters to our destinations and make our destinations awesome. At the end of the day, it is about the livelihoods and well-being of what we do and how we transform these destinations. So now let's turn over to our panelists and let's get to introduce them. I am going to start with Z to A with first names. So Zeke, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Zeke Coleman. I'm the Director of Data Intelligence for Visit Savannah. And I guess I'm at the first stage of hoarding, and I'll just admit that I'm a bit of a hoarder. I was trying to answer one of the first questions, and I went and looked up an old note for how many sources, and yeah, I'm probably a hoarder. So I'm here, I'm admitting, not sure I'm recovering yet, but first step.
Thank you. Mitch.
Hey, I'm Mitch Witten. I head marketing for Visit Fort Worth, Texas. I'm probably in the denial stage. I think I'm a minimalist, but I probably have a closet full of data I need to get rid of. So I'm in the denial state, proud denier right here.
Jeanette.
I am Jeanette Carter. I'm the Director of Marketing at Visit Tampa Bay. I am in the throw it out and look for it later stage. I throw everything into my recycle bin and then have to dig through it and find what I've thrown out already. So that's my problem then.
Great, thanks. Andrea.
Perfect. I'm Andre Godfrey. I am the Vice President at Longwoods. Previously I was with the DARA, and I was on the DMO side for 8 years with Georgia and Texas. And I would have to say, after a long history of wearing different hats and data, I'm moving from full-on hoarder into somewhat of a tidy housekeeper, but there's still room for improvement.
That's great, thank you. Becca, next slide. You can. Becca, next slide, please. So just letting you guys know, this is where this conversation started. We were having a meeting here about 6 weeks ago, and Jay Kinghorn, one of our founders who used to be with Utah Tourism was like, oh my God, I used to keep all these marketing and attribution reports and I would save them for years and they look cool. And then I just thought maybe someday somebody was gonna ask me for them and I kept them for years. And then Ezra jumped in and said,
I mean, it was a moment of confession. And I remember 4 or 5 years ago, we were moving offices in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, with Virginia Tourism. And there were these files from 20 years ago or so. And I thought, oh my God, we have to keep these files because it's going to be useful one day. And I was carrying those files on my high heels back to the new office. It was just comical, but we never used those files. It was just useless. And I was still holding on to them. So that was my learning experience.
so we knew that, you know what, this is a topic that seems to really resonate with people. So let's move forward with it and get our experts to talk a little bit about some of these questions we're going to ask them. So Becca, next one. We decided sometimes conversations take a little while to get started. We're going to go with the old chat pack method, and you're going to get questions in the very format of the chat pack. So if you haven't seen that, these are conversation starters. Here's our first one.
So I'm going to pick Jeanette on this question. I'm going to pick on her because I know she has a lot to say. How many data streams do you have coming into your DMO, and how many things do you really need?
Okay, so this is probably a two-pronged question for us because convention sales has their own set of data, and then, you know, leisure sales and kind of advertising has another set of data. So it's coming in from all different areas. We have data that's immediate from some of our digital buys. We have data that's 17 months in the rears, like our, you know, our economic impact and visitor profile stuff. So we have stuff coming at us from all directions. And for me, who's kind of top level, I'm not in the data day to day. It's very difficult for me to fact check and spit out what's truly relevant for our stakeholders.
Zeke, what about you? I know you have a lot to say here too. You use lots of data streams, and I have seen your list.
Yeah, you have seen them. Yeah, so we probably have about 24 plus. I mean, honestly, it depends on what you're talking about. But there's a lot of those that don't matter, and that can range from, kind of like Jeanette said, from the B2B side to the B2C side. And then you have reports that come in from campaigns, and some of those we just scrap because they don't matter, because the information they give us is vanity metrics like clicks and click-through rates and things like that, that if we place the pixel or if we're tracking it some other way, we don't use it. And then other parts are just, they're kind of duplicate data sets. So for instance, if I already know how many people booked or arrived at a location, then I may not really care if there was a booking referral per se. I might, but it's not really answering key questions. So I would just say we probably only need like 6 to 7, maybe 8, maybe on each side of the business. And for me, it's about answering these key questions. Who are my top customers? Where are they? What do they like? How can I reach them most efficiently? What should I show them? Did we reach them after the fact? Are they now a customer? And then how can we improve upon this? Like data that answers those key questions are things that are important to me.
I love hearing about those key questions. Mitch, what about you, since we are still talking about marketing?
Well, I think Jeanette made a great point about we have not only too much information, but it's not talking to each other. So for example, I think the STAR data, our sales team loves looking at the STAR data, our CFO does, the marketing team doesn't really look at the STAR data. And so you've got a culture mishmash going on. So we need to get, it's not just how much data we have, but to Zeke's point, let's agree on what's important. And then we all go for the same thing. So I'd love to see us come together more on some of those things like STAR and layer those data points so we can talk to each other even within our own companies.
And Andrea, what about you? Anything on surveys or anything we should lay our eyes on?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about today's session, and, Mitch and Zeke, I think y'all are spot on. And Janet, you highlighted it too, is that there's not necessarily a right number that fits every DMO. It's the right number is the number of data points that you need to answer your biggest questions for marketing and to satisfy your stakeholders. And that's really where that right number sits.
That's great. Thank you all. That was a great one. We're going to go on to the next one here. Next question. Okay, I like this one because we do this, my wife and I do this every year after Christmas. We go to our closet and we look at our clothes, and it's one of those, if we haven't worn it in that year, we get rid of it and we donate it. And it's just a simple thing we do. And I always end up getting rid of a bunch of bar t-shirts and crap that I wanted to keep, but I get rid of it. So right there, like cleaning out your closet, name 2 data streams that you'd like to get rid of, that you're thinking these might not be really relevant anymore. And then maybe 2 that you're thinking, you know what, I want to embrace those next in 2021. And go ahead, I'm going to start this one with Mitch.
All right, so I'm a big fan, Ted, of cleaning out. You got to take everything out and only put back in what you need. So I know the thing we all have in common, we are looking forward to getting rid of COVID numbers in 2021. We're going to get to that point, but on a serious note, the 2 things I really that we're really getting rid of are, I want to get rid of old data. I've got developers who have sophisticated real estate tools who tell them, oh, I had 30,000 people in town last weekend. I don't need to wait 6 weeks. I don't add any value if I wait 6 weeks to kind of come up with some guesstimation on I think those numbers are. We've got a lot of people dealing in real time, and we need to catch up. And I think PR measurements, old things like ad equivalency of stories and all that. We want to tell deep stories about how our PR placements are performing. Are they positive? Are they negative? How many shares? A lot of great, rich stuff there. What am I going to add? 2 things. We haven't really nailed the spending story. I need to figure out the right tools for understanding what visitors are spending beyond the annual survey. What are those tools? What is that tool I can use to do that? So I can be more of a revenue manager. And then lastly, I'm going to go old school on you and tell you that email open rate has made a comeback for us. We've added more communication, especially contacting locals, and that may be my surprise ad for the year.
That's great. Jeanette, what else do you have to add on that? I thought that was awesome, Mitch. Thank you.
Yeah, me too, Mitch. Website analytics, I think, is something that we've kind of steered away from. Click our ad to come to Visit Tampa Bay. People don't care about Visit Tampa Bay. Our goal is to get visitors here, generating economic impact, staying in our hotels, visiting our partners. So time on site, while we do have inspiring stories and we try to engage them, to me, it's far less important as if we resonate and they come and they engage with one of our partners. So that's something that is still important, but we don't report out. We want to have content that's engaging, but at the same time, if they don't stay on Visit Tampa Bay's site, we're okay with that, as long as they continue to follow us and come. I agree with Mitch on PR analytics. I think they're inflated. I think that it's very difficult. We have, some of our team go and they look at, a rate card, and that's how we figure it out. And how accurate that is, I don't know. But I think just garnering exposure and being able to tell those stories and show that exposure rather than just the media value is a little bit more impactful. Also, to Mitch's point, from a STR standpoint, I think COVID has really forced us to fall further down the funnel on conversions. Visit Tampa Bay has been less focused on brand awareness and more focused on immediate bookings. So very differently than probably a year ago, our advertising team, we're looking at our STR reports. We're looking to see if our, OTA ad placements are making an impact. And, watching that lift every week, that's important to us because we do feel like our advertising and marketing is influencing that, because our bookings are lower funnel and they're transactional and they're happening. We're not doing big out-of-home placements right now. So STR in the marketing world has become much more important in the last year. And then I think economic impact, even though sometimes it's a little late in the rears, it's still a story that from an advocacy standpoint, we're always trying to tell. It's important for our politicians to know. It's important for our community to know that tourism matters. And this is the jobs that we support. And this is, underlying all of the community funding that we support. And I think economic impact's like my one baby that I want to scream it, off the top of the mountain. That's so important. And people don't know it.
Great. I think it's great because especially Mitch, you're talking about spending. You just had the World Series in your town and the rodeo that you had in town during a time where events are like possibly frowned upon. How much should this do that? And then Jeanette, you got the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. And when all my Chiefs fans make it down there, I know you want to see how much money they spent. So I think it's important in visitor spend to really show what we bring during this time. I think that was great. Andrea, do you, and then I'm gonna take it to Zeke. Andrea, what else do you think you want to add and remove?
Remove anything. It might be one data set, it might be 10, anything that doesn't meet your new goals. Let's call a spade as an industry. Some of us have had a really rough year as DMOs, and we're running lean and mean, and your goals have probably changed. So pitch anything that did work with the old goals, but doesn't work with the new. And then my two that I would add would be image research and sentiment research. So right now we are in the midst of transition. I'm going to be positive. We're transitioning out of a global pandemic. I'm a little forward thinking, going to be positive here. And, being close to the traveler and understanding what's motivating them to travel or what's keeping them from traveling or what they're desiring to do is really where you can have that emotional approach with your advertising. And when it comes to, and that's sentiment, that applies to your residents too. I know Mitch mentioned, those email open rates with their residents. So understanding where they sit with sentiment and with image, what people think of a destination and how they evaluate it has changed. That perception of health and safety, or how and what those experiences are that they can have there. And we've been shifting as a DMO industry, a lot of the markets that we're advertising in, and we've been quiet in a lot of markets that we used to have a voice in that are important for sources of business in the long term. So understanding how people's perceptions of our destination has changed and how our image has shifted is how we can be proactive and really kind of ahead of the curve with our marketing as we move through 21.
Great points. Zeke, finish it up.
Yeah, I think all that was incredibly sufficient. I would add, kind of piggybacking on what was just stated, that any data that you're keeping because you don't want to tell your stakeholders the truth that data doesn't matter, it's kind of basically the same thing that Andre just said. But any of that kind of data, get rid of it. And then anything that is singular, what I mean by that is kind of what Mitch was saying. STR data in and of itself is good, but if you can contextualize that by everything else you're doing, that's really valuable. And so that would also be what I would add, is sort of a triangulation of the different data points. In and of themselves, they give you a lot of misleading things you might take away, but correlation doesn't equal causation, and you need to compare those different data points all in one to know what's really happening. So I would add more of that.
Zeke, you spoke like a true researcher, from correlation to regression to triangulation. I love hearing that. You mentioned about 2020, all of you. It was the toughest as it can get. It was a very raw year. But how the DMOs responded, I mean, the agility that we have seen in the marketplace was unbelievable. Some of the marketing messages were just so beautiful. So we would like to ask you, what are some of the marketing data strategies and data points that you admire most that you have seen recently? And I know you guys have done such a good job too. So please feel free to share some of your efforts too. And I'm going to start with Andrea, since you're the non-DMO.
Okay. So I really am very fortunate at Longwoods that I and our team get to work with over 150 DMOs, couple who are, and they're on the screen. I always point on the screen on Zoom, even though I forget everyone's in different orders. Couple that are here on the Zoom with us today that really give wonderful examples of DMOs that run marketing strategies that I admire. And what makes, Zeke and Mitch and teams really something that I admire in terms of marketing strategy and an organizational strategy is that they're data driven. They don't do it if they can't measure it. And so that's something that it's been really a treat transitioning from, because as I said, I am a data geek. It's been wonderful transitioning from the client side over to the data provider side, because I've gotten to see that there's not that one size fits all, and there's not the one strategy that fits all, but it's those that are data driven. And those that live and die by that mantra of, if you can't measure it, you don't do it.
Yeah, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Mitch, you guys have done such an excellent job in Fort Worth with you all stay home message. Anything that you like to share from that or from recent efforts?
Actually, there's another DMO I've learned a lot from. I won't name, but to Andre's point about sentiment, one of the problems we run into with data hoarding is, sometimes we treat those annual surveys like Christmas, and we don't know how the present got there. We don't know where the data came from, but wow, the resident survey turned out great. One DMO is really actually building out a plan. They may take that survey once or maybe twice a year, but you got to build out a plan in between those points. What are you going to do to move the needle? And, again, especially for those long lead kind of things that Andre was talking about. So, I think that's the real challenge for leadership, frankly, is you have to hold short and long-term goals in your mind at the same time. And so I want to be better at making plans for how I'm going to move needles, especially for those long lead things. And Jeanette talked about economic impact. We may only take one big pulse check on that a year, but what is my plan each month to affect that? So that's something I'm really learning.
It is a balancing effort, and I love the Christmas analogy. I want Christmas every day, or a holiday every day. Jeanette, what about you? Anything from Tampa? You guys have been doing fabulous, and your focus on low funnel, everything is showing in your numbers as well.
In our entire state, I'm a Florida born baby. So, I appreciate Visit Florida and their efforts. All of the DMOs have pivoted so nicely, picked up great, safe, clean, effective, creative, I think, across the entire United States. Fortunately, Florida, we're lucky to have, beautiful beaches, beautiful parks, a lot of fun things that help kind of reinforce safe travel. From a Visit Tampa Bay perspective, at the beginning, we headed off regional DMO meetings where we brought together all of our DMOs on the West Coast and talked about what we were doing, and we all kind of fed off each other, and we brainstormed on how to better, expose our region and our community. So that's been great. We had a Florida's Most platform that we had been building on for many years. It lent itself great to new creative, Florida's Most, wide open spaces, all of that. So we've been lucky to kind of pivot and transition a little bit.
Excellent. Zeke, what about you?
So I'm going to do a little tongue in cheek. Unfortunately, I don't get to see their marketing often because they're all targeting quite accurately and suppressing me from their targets and making sure that by data, I am not seeing their advertising. The ones that I see probably are not doing that. So, but I'll say this, I'll say that there's several that I know that people are doing cool stuff, and I keep hearing about it, right? So Fort Worth, actually, I know Lauren Phillips on your team, Mitch, she's really bright. She calls and we talk about different things, and I can just hear from the different studies that you guys are doing, the different presentations you're making to different people, that they have a really robust strategy and they're well thought out, and you have the right kind of people hired. So I think that's really cool. And then St. Pete Clearwater, I often see, I'll get a phone call, talk to someone about some data, and find out that they already talked to them. And I'm like, how did this happen? How does this keep happening? So I'm just curious to know, what are they doing? Leroy is always a mystery to me, so I need to call him and learn more.
That's great.
Perfect.
All right, Zeke, I'm going to go back to on our next question here, because this is one that you and I talked about. I think this is perfect for just the timing of this, and everyone brought this up of surveys waiting till the end of the year for Christmas. All right, so the next one, Becca. With so much data being available daily now, how much time is too long for your data and insights to even be relevant to your destination? This is two-part. With so much, how do you balance timeliness and relevance? Is there a mix that really makes sense on how often you ingest the data and actually use that for insights for your destination? See, you're first.
Yeah, so I'm the guy, right? Like, I will have this other screen I have with 4 different windows of the 24 data sets, and I'm trying to answer a question, and I'll have a notepad right here, and I'm literally just asking questions and looking, and it's hard to even, like, I might try to export it and put it all in a spreadsheet and clean it up. The amount of time that kind of stuff takes is ridiculous. And like Andrea even alluded to, I mean, we're kind of running thin, we're leaner. And if you're on the digital team, you're probably being leaned on a bit more. If you're on the data team, even more. And so time is precious. You're going from shutdown to open back up to shut down. Okay, now all of a sudden, big push. And if you're having to do that, and analysis and cleaning the data that's a whole industry. Like that's a whole job, let alone asking the right questions, analyzing it. And so any time is too much time. We don't have enough time in our industry. And so really, I would say, again, getting back to this triangulation idea, putting all the data in one place and being able to quickly ask questions of it and see it is essential. That's the $1 million solution, I think.
That's great. And good segue to Andrea. I mean, because you mentioned it, and we're working with Longwoods in the surveys, and knowing you guys are kind of speeding up some of the time in the surveys and some of the residents. What are you doing differently, and what do you see changing?
Yeah, I think, at kind of a more of a high level, every data point, just like every sauce or leftover item in your fridge, it all has a shelf life. And it's gonna be different on the data points. And the thing is, you can't just rely on, I think it was Zeke said it a while ago, you can't just rely on one data point. And you have to use those multiple data points. And when we talk about really kind of the data and analytics, and we talk about, the arrivals, we talk about the bookings, the engagement on site, those are those short-term metrics that are really important to know how you're moving the needle. But it takes some of those metrics that do have some latency to get that information, like hearing the voice of the traveler and understanding the why and understanding the sentiment, that it does take that time. Now, fortunately, I know for us at Longwoods, we work with some providers that are able to, and some platforms that are able to allow us to have tight turns on that. But especially when you talk about talking to travelers about their travel experience, or talking to residents about their sentiment, it's a deeper data set from a different perspective that you're going to have to spend some time getting in there. So that's where, if you meld those two together, you've got that larger picture. And Zeke, I'm gonna kind of steal your words again. That's when you can really start to triangulate.
Right. Like
No stealing.
no,
Just
you
kidding.
know, you steal. We do that in this industry all the time. Mitch, what do you think? I like the shelf life analogy that you had there, Andrea. What's something maybe too late, and you're like, you know what, I'm getting this too late. It's not really helping me at all anymore.
I think it goes back to what Zeke was saying a minute ago. For the hard part is, what are your goals? Because the thing with data is so addicting, because I want to know all these things. I want to know everything, but it really has to fit back up under the goals. What are your organization's goals? And then the data should serve that, not the other way around, which is hard, because you got to pick some things to focus on. You can't do it all. The second thing I'd say that really goes along with this: bring your data to your meetings. One thing we're trying to get better at is, again, don't just look at the data points the night before the board meeting, and I'm bad about that. So are we talking about the numbers? Are we seeing how we're doing? Sometimes the data conversation happens separate from the strategy conversation. How do we bring those together and actually talk and look at it together? Is the needle moving the way we want to? If not, what are we going to do about it?
Great, thank you. Jeanette?
Yeah, I kind of agree with the entire panel. I mean, here's my Entrada plug. I think that's why it was so important to have this dashboard. You guys are taking all the raw data that we've spent hours on as a team, overlaying some that correlate not at all to one another, others that, directly impact decision making, and kind of cleaning it up and, spot checking different vendors and pulling it out into a dashboard. And Ezra and I have spent many an hour talking about what are our pain points and how can we accomplish those answers on this dashboard. So I think, I am not as involved as Zeke is in the research side. So for me, having this dashboard and having you guys work directly with our vendors to really accomplish whatever those 5-10 goals are as an organization is so helpful, and is, exactly where we want to go as a Visit Tampa Bay.
That's great.
I love that. Should we move to the next question?
Let's do it.
Janet, you were right on the topic. And Becca, if we could change the slide, it will be lovely. Janet talked about focus and change. 2020, everything has been about change. Change has been the only constant in our lives. And it really brings us to that focus. How are we going to prioritize from strategic perspective to goals and metrics? So my next question is, if marketing is now focusing on behaviors more than demographics, which data is just now cluster or irrelevant to your efforts? What should you be ditching? And let's start with, this question is for Andrea.
It's for Andrea.
Yeah, Andrea.
All right. So it gets back to that. If something doesn't answer your biggest questions, it equals clutter. And that goes in the pitch bin. Thinking about tidying up our houses, it's clutter if it doesn't answer your questions. And what you have left is the data that you need. And so it's really to make these strategic marketing decisions, you need to know the what, you need to know the why. So you need to know the what. And like Jen, I know you've mentioned, you and your team work with a lot of those. What are those engagement metrics on the sites? What are those click-throughs? What are the people that, how many people are coming into your market? And then it's the why. It's the why is the image will tell you the why. Why do they want to come to your destination? Visitor profile will tell you what do they do when they come to your destination? What kind of imagery and messages do you need to show to them? And it's whenever you have this larger picture of the what and the why is where you can make these highly strategic programs. When I first joined the Longwoods team, they gave me one of the best examples. When we first started, we were not just in travel, and we were working with a not to be named cereal brand, and we were doing focus groups. And we asked these moms, we said, why do you pick a cereal for your kids? And overwhelmingly, what's the right parental answer? Nutrition. We care all about nutrition. And we took the notes, we were excited. And then we asked our next question is, what's the last cereal that you bought? Well, anybody that's a parent on this call or that has babysat a child or has nieces and nephews understands that most of the cereals we heard were the Toucan Sam, they were the Fruit Loops, the Cocoa Puffs. And we asked them, why did you buy this cereal last? And as more we dug in, we found out that while they wanted to buy the cereal that was most nutritious for the kids, what made them make that decision is what they could actually get the kid to eat. And so what we ended up working with was new packaging for the cereal company that had both the design and that promise of a tasty snack for the kids and a good breakfast, but also had the nutritional balance for the parents as well. And that's what we as destinations have to do. We have to get that full picture of the what and the why. And if something's not answering the what or the why, it's got to go.
Andrea, I love hearing that. I mean, it goes back to that purpose. Why are we here and why are we doing that? And if we cannot answer that, we don't need to be doing what we are doing. Mitch, you have done such a great job at Fort Worth, not only from a strategic perspective, but aligning your team on these changing paradigms. Anything that you like to add here?
Well, I want to build on what Andrea said because I think it's really important. And I'm going to go out on a limb with a hot sports opinion and say I'm going to put target markets, drive markets on the chopping block in terms of the data I'm interested in. Now, Zeke, Lauren on our team would kill me for saying this because she's done a great job of identifying where people are coming from. And we're very blessed in Texas to have so many drive markets around us. But Andrea, I think that we've overemphasized that as an industry, and we have not focused enough on the why. So, it's interesting. I was talking the other day to Gloria Laurie, is the Chief Marketing Officer for Destination Canada. And she said she doesn't look at geography as much anymore. Her target customers are the people who like what they like and what the locals like. And I just thought that was an interesting spin on it. So we're not ditching target markets. We're not ditching where people are coming from. I just think there's an overemphasis that we need to put more emphasis what Andrea is talking about in terms of what do they like and why are they coming here? And I think the emphasis has been flipped for too long.
Zeke, what about you? Do you have anything else to add here? Because I know you have been so hands-on on this recently from a digital perspective.
Yeah, totally. I love that example, by the way. And it really highlights just the importance of relevancy, right? Like, what is the data? What is the question that it's answering? And in that case, they're answering, how do we get people to buy this box? Like, that's all we want to know. And how do we use information to understand how we can help get them to buy the box? And so, like in Mitch's example, I could see you very easily saying, we don't care about target markets, which I'm on that train. And yet we realize, like, okay, for them to actually come though, we might have to list that there's a direct flight from New York or whatever, as we're explaining or expressing to them, why you might want to take that trip. I would just say similarly, I'm wanting to answer difficult questions. With SEO, we were on a call the other day actually, and we were looking at all these things like keyword volume and number of clicks and impressions. And I just, there was such a disparity between some of our keywords. I thought, man, it would be wonderful if we could align all of these data points together so I can see which of these keywords should we build an article on, and it'll actually lead to someone coming to market versus one that actually it's just people who are in market and looking for things to do. And so there's another problem to be solved in the data world that you guys can tackle.
It is an always on strategy. Jeanette, do you have anything else to add here since you inspired us with this question?
I think we're blessed as marketers to be able, it used to be just customer intercept. We just took what people said as face value, and that's how we did our media planning, and that's how we defined our demographic. And now, freakishly, we can see a lot about a customer, and we can, shift, and we can talk, we can place creative that's resonating. And so I think, as we continue to evolve and technology continues to evolve, we can become better and better marketers. And really, to Mitch's point, talk to people that, tell people the story that they want to hear.
All right. That was a good one.
Perfect.
All right, next one. We're moving along well, guys. I think we're gonna get all laid in. I really like this one, and I see this as an industry changing thing, guys. And we have this opportunity, all right? 2021, we're not really looking back and measuring ourselves against 2019 anymore. People are traveling differently. They're traveling more emotional. People are going to be coming in our shoulder seasons. Kids might be able to remote learn and stay at a house for a week in a destination more than just a 3-day weekend kind of thing. So with all those things, seeing this as an opportunity for our industry to really change and evolve for the better. Is some of that data that we look at from the past, is that just irrelevant now? Is it become clutter? Do we look at different things? Mitch, take us off and tell us what you think. Is that past data just clutter, or is it just not as important?
Well, I think it will be again one day when we really will get past COVID and the handshake is not dead, and life really will move forward, as Andrea said. But I'm going to bring up something that doesn't always get brought up in these conversations, and that's meetings marketing. It's not the fun leisure stuff, but meetings are very important to our hotels and to our destination, and we're really missing that business travel now. And I think that's one of the places that's become really unhinged in this environment because it's not happening. And so I think that we've got a lot of hand holding to do and a lot of soul searching over the next 18 months while we find our way back to meetings. And so that's an area especially where we've got to be very, very careful about where the past is really going to be, we're really in suspended animation on that. And yet we're all drawn to looking back at those numbers in year over year comparison. But back on the leisure side, the one thing I would add, when you look at things that we can compare to, web visits, things that are still ongoing, we could do a better job as an industry of looking at year over year. Sometimes we just look at isolated numbers and we're not looking at those trend lines. So back to dashboards that help us visualize that, that's so important. So I think it will be important again, but we've got to suspend reality for a little while longer.
Okay. See?
Yeah, this is where I say at the beginning that I'm kind of admitting it, but I'm not yet recovered as a hoarder. I still think the past data is important, even though right now it's not contextually relevant because of COVID. But I do hope for a day when that past data will not need to be looked at by a human, but a machine, maybe AI or something, some machine that has taken that in, built it into the model, factored in all the COVIDs and 2008, financial crisis and all that, and basically give us a very well thought out answer that the machine thought about. So I do hope for a day that can happen, but I don't think it's today.
That's great. Thanks. Jeanette?
Okay, sorry, I got a little sidebarred. I was reading Emily's question about the panelists talking about useful data points that they collect to access the why of travel and what visitors like. So I could answer that real quick.
Let's answer that real quick and then just say, if you were also the one that kind of brought up, I don't have to look at all my past data anymore. So maybe you can find a way to combine those there.
Yeah, so I think it's important to, and this kind of ties in actually looking at points of interest, right? So when people get here, what are they doing? And we did that on the meeting side too, to find out the value. If we have a big meeting at our convention center, where are they going? What are they doing? Are there ads that I could be serving them while they're in market that are partner focused, whether it's a city pass, whether it's a restaurant pass or a Riverwalk, tour, anything like that. So I think that's really important. And to Emily's point, once they do come in market, it's important for us to see what they like to do, because a lot of times that alters our creative messaging for when we go back out into market. What are people doing when they're here? What value are they seeing? Where are they going? Obviously, if they're interested while they're in market, that's something that I want to show to prospective visitors.
That's great. Andrea, last, what would you think?
Yeah, for sure. To also address kind of where the why is going to come from a lot of survey. It's going to come from focus group. It's getting close, not COVID close, but in the world of research, close to the traveler, talking to the traveler. The pandemic's really disrupted the way we travel. It's disrupted the way we measure. It's disrupted how we position ourselves as DMOs. And travel today is probably going to look really different from a year from now too. And so right now we're really relying a lot on that geolocation for those early indicators. We're relying a lot on resident and traveler sentiment. And that's giving us these shorter term points of views of what's happening in the market right now. But it's important that we understand what are the long-term trends, because the market will return. Business, as Mitch was talking about, meetings will come back. If you have that meeting product, the meetings are going to come back. If you have events, they're going to come back. And that's where that data becomes really, really important to take a look at. Because if you understand not only what is long-term held as your addressable market, as your addressable opportunities, that's where when you start to look at the short term, you can start to understand how that's evolving and really fine tune those marketing campaigns like Janet was talking about, and repositioning your points of interest and items like that.
Mitch, you had a follow up on that you wanted to add?
Well, and it's related to Emily's question too. I think PR can play a role. I think to Andrea's point, the surveys and the studies are really important for drilling down on what people recognize in your market. But also as we begin to get better insights on social shares, and we're just now turning on some modules and tools that are allowing us to get a better picture of that, to see social media traction on PR stories and placements can also reflect the changing perceptions that may be kind of between those big surveys. So I would say PR plays a role as well in your both your social stories and also media placements.
That's great.
Thank you, Mitch. And Emily, thank you for that great question. I love these questions that are coming in. It makes a really great point. So now I want us to be like really, really honest. Like this is the time for confession. And Becca, if you can pull that slide. So what is your data addiction and what can you not get rid of? Come on, guys, let's be honest. So I'm going to start with Zeke.
Mobile location data is my addiction. It is crazy. That's so cool, but it's creepy and it makes you want to turn your phone off. But to see anonymized data of what users are doing in market, where they're going. I mean, I think Andrea was right. I just pulled up Longwood's platform, and crosstabs is great for finding out the why of why people come. But when you look at what people are actually doing, I mean, there's nothing like what they do. Even in the cereal example, I mean, people will tell you one thing sometimes, but you have to ask that good follow-up to really know, like, okay, but what did you do? And that what did you do in location data is killer. I think it's the killer app, honestly. And then what can I not get rid of? It's like, I keep hearing you need to get rid of the low funnel and purchase data and all that stuff. And I ain't on it yet. I want that data still. So that's mine.
What about you, Janet? Because I can see your wheels turning. You've been thinking when Zeke was talking.
So similar to mobile, ours is probably credit card. Like some of our highest trending expenditures are like vet bills from people that have traveled with their pet and their pet has gotten sick, or EMT bills and their kid, fell off a ride and broke its arm. It's so funny to watch these credit card transactions from out-of-state visitors. Like it becomes obsessive to like see the weird stuff that they're doing. So that's fun. I don't know. there's so many different touch points, and this is such a huge animal. I know we're focused a lot on marketing and how it really drives our marketing decisions, but it drives on our convention sales, to Mitch's point, whether or not we put in incentive dollars to bring a convention back into town. Like, research has so many legs within our organization. And even, you know, I don't know if there's one that I could truly get rid of. I like to think that we kind of let things go and we pull in like a Longwoods when we know that there's something that's important that we need to survey and get answers for. We just did a residence, you know, value of tourism survey, which was very impactful and something that we could put out into the community. Longwoods did that for us. So I like to think that we try to keep it pretty tidy, but it's a monster. Research is a monster.
It's a jungle. I keep saying it's a jungle.
It's a jungle.
Mitch, what about you?
Well, I'm addicted to PR stats. I'm interested in the way that the industry is changing and how we measure things. And I really think that seeing how people respond to our stories, one of the reasons for that is we're trying to tell more stories in Fort Worth and to change perception that we may be known just for cowboys and cowgirls, which is important, but there are other aspects. That's important because we're trying to get the community involved and for them to see themselves in our tourism story. So that's one of the ways we get some immediate gratification on that. The thing I can't get rid of, we also think we're an underappreciated destination, and so we want to punch above our weight. So I love those surveys that again, to Zeke's point, they don't show the actual cell phone behavior, but the top of the funnel surveys that say, would you visit Fort Worth? Are you more likely this year to visit Fort Worth? And again, I think that's not as accurate as what are they really doing, who's really coming, but I can't get rid of that because I'm also addicted to that.
Mitch, Zeke just put something on chat, and you talked about the PR data, but I want you to talk about the purpose of that, because you have done such an amazing job in your community, making sure everyone is safe, but beyond that, supporting those local businesses, local communities. Personally, I was very touched by it, both personally and professionally, and I would love everyone to hear more about it.
So it really started right before COVID in the sense of how are we going to get more people involved in tourism? And I think the old tourism model is, that CVB is out there doing some good. I'm not sure where those visitors are going, but glad that's good. We need that. And now is how is it helping me as a community member? People want to be part of the story beyond just your 3 or 4 biggest attractions. We did some videos in partnership with the Black Chamber of Commerce in Fort Worth on the eve of COVID, before COVID. And some of those videos that we hired local filmmakers to do this have been our most responded to videos. And so to be able to tell the community back, in fact, we shared last night with a community group that content is resonating, and then they get excited about it, and then they want to invite their friends. So I think that one of the unsung heroes of tourism is the local. And we can talk about visiting friends and relatives and all that, but our success is directly related to how to community pride and how excited people are and whether they're going to share that information and those stories and feel like it's relevant to their life.
Thank you. Andrea?
No, I have to not to keep going on about it. Mitch, y'all been doing a great job. It's been wonderful to see what y'all have been doing with all of this. So for those that are familiar with me, I love new data because I'm a total data geek through and through. And so for me, it's a challenge to make sure that I'm not only always looking for new metrics, but that I'm reevaluating the research that I have in my toolkit, because really it's a lot of what we have as DMOs with our partners for research. Really, we can leverage in a different way. And so that's something I really try to do in my day-to-day with research is not just say what's something new and different, but also how can I reassess, how can I re-leverage and look at the data in different ways to answer my new questions. But in general, what needs to be gotten rid of is any KPI that doesn't answer your biggest questions. And you always want to keep any KPI that helps you prove your existence. That's so important.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you all. All right, we have one final question. And to let everyone else know, this is a good final question to end on. We will be doing sort of a follow-up one-pager to everyone of the couple hundred DMOs that have registered for this, sort of offering our recommendations for how to get rid of DMO hoarding. We just had an internal conversation here at Entrada about what's the protocol for this, and like we basically said, what if you list 15 questions of about your destination, and if this destination doesn't answer those 15 questions, get rid of it. I mean, that's it. Does it help the resident? Does it help the community? Does it transform the organization? Does it track the money? And if it doesn't do those things, get rid of it. So we will list those and send them to you all. This is one for everyone. I'm going to start right now. Mitch, back to you. What do you recommend to DMO hoarding addicts, for the DMOs on there? What do you recommend? Just even if it's just a short thing, just do this.
I'm going to go back to what Zeke said, and you got to set a goal and then let the data support the goal and not vice versa.
Perfect. Zeke, can you reiterate there? Do you have anything else to add to it?
That's it. I mean, he stole mine, but that's good. No, that's good. No, he didn't steal it. I didn't even have
No
that.
stealing.
I was joking. But I would just say either build an internal team to catalog, clean, and organize your data, or get a good company that does that and do it for you. That would be mine, other than what Mitch said, which is perfect.
And Jeanette, when you and I were on a first call about a month ago, and you were like, hey, look, I just want to clean this up. I want to get it done. I'm sick of looking at 10 different dashboards. What do you recommend? What's helped you get through this process and everything else?
Gosh, I hate to mirror the two guys before me, but it's, really identifying those goals. And I know it can be so cumbersome and so hard, but it's really sitting down with each relevant department, including your, COO, and what's important to your board, and, picking out those couple points and identifying which data points answer those questions. And I think, it's also important to understand that methodology changes. So maybe the old stuff needs to go, and just to be, evolve and, really use technology to our advantage.
That's great. Andrea, you were back at Georgia Tourism. You had to digitize years worth of data while you were there. What do you recommend that from your experiences there and with Adara and with Longwoods that you would recommend to do that with about there?
Mine's going to be very similar to what the other panelists have said, is bring your stakeholders into the conversation. And that also includes your residents. Like Mitch was talking about earlier, your resident often is that first visitor right now in today's travel market for many of us. And your resident also is your biggest partner and your biggest advocate. So bring your partners and your stakeholders within the CVB into the conversation, talk to your residents. But, for those starting out, step one, buy a whiteboard and start whiteboarding out. That's simple. These are my big questions. Here's where each one of those data points aligns. And if it doesn't fit in there, wipe it off the board and carry the banker boxes outside.
That's great. Well, that was our final question, and we just have a couple minutes left. I think it's great. I know eTourism has a call right after this. I want to thank all of our panelists for their candidness over this. I actually think this is going to be a topic in some of our vernacular and our narrative in the industry, that data hoarding and getting rid of clutter this year and embracing new streams is something that we all need to do as an industry if we need to get better. The opening slide even said, I mean, when you clear out clutter, it clears out obstacles, and we do need to get better. So I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you so much for your candidness. Anything else you would like to add?
I would like to say, treat each data set as a recommendation from a trusted good friend, and keep yourself in good company. And thank you so much for everyone being with us today. And closure. Thank you.
Thank you all, everybody. That was wonderful. Great panel.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, guys.